All right, what's going on, everybody? How you doing today? I wanted to come live and talk to you guys about this whole NAR proposed settlement news that we've been seeing all over the news today. It's been kind of crazy, and I know a lot of you folks are really tripping out on what's happening right now. So the first thing I want to say is I'm doing this live feed for a couple reasons. One of those reasons is that I'm starting to see a lot of misinformation out there. What do I mean by this? It's the same thing that happens every time big news comes out in our industry. We get real estate agents posting half news out into the market, not really understanding the full scope of things, and just posting off, I don't know, some theory that they've created. And then what happens is that the people behind them come and they take the same posts and they regurgitate the same content or share the content and give it validity. And it becomes the news that people are understanding. So like people are going to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and they're actually getting their news from this rather than just going to the NAR website and getting the information. And so I wanted to come in here, share some information with you, show you what's going on, kind of share the email that was circulated this morning, tell you my thoughts on it, right? You know, somebody just posted, I always get my info straight from the source. Excellent, right? Like that's what we all should be doing. And by the way, not only getting your info straight from the source, but also understanding the information before we go off to Facebook on a rampage and posting out a bunch of information. So I'm going to share my screen with you. This is the NAR website, the Facts for Realtors, right? This is like facts.realtor.com or something like that. And here you can get the press release that was sent out. You can get the downloaded PDF for the fact sheet of what's going on. You can get the settlement agreement right here, the legit settlement agreement that was filed with the courts right over here. You can get the press release that was sent out. You can get the settlement fact sheet, and you can get the Q&A, which gives a lot of information on the Q&A. But as I read through, about 80% of this, and I realized that it was very well summarized in the email that went out this morning. And so let's just take a look at this email real quick that was sent out from the president of NAR. And by the way, as we look at this stuff, realize that we're actually in a position or in a world where we're going to start seeing more options come up, right? So many of you saw the interview that I did with the gentleman who founded AREA, which is the American Real Estate Association, which is supposed to come out to compete, to not to dismantle NAR, but to provide competition so that us real estate agents have an opportunity to choose, right? And so what this said is, let me see if I can make this bigger for you guys, because I know if I am blind and having trouble seeing it, you probably are having trouble seeing it too. That's the best I can do right now, guys. Let's see. There we go. All right, let's go. National Association of Realtors sent this out. So this was, remember that there is a major class action lawsuit, and then there were copycat cases filed across the country, across the United States. And it raised questions, right, about the way real estate professionals do work. Now, we know as real estate professionals, we know that yes, the average 6% to do a listing. Nowadays, you see so many different things. There's 5%. I drove by a bus bench earlier this morning that said 3.9%, right? So there's no rule that says 6% is it. And there's no rule that says, like, as a seller, you have to do this. It's very well stated out in the listing agreement, how much is being charged, how much goes to the buyer side, the buyer agency. And so all of these things have been very clear for a long time. But what they were trying to say was that we were misleading the public with the way that we do business. And so let's tap into this real quick. It says from the beginning of the litigation, they had two goals: secure a release of liability and preserve the choice customers have regarding real estate services and compensation, which is very important, right? Protect our members, protect our associations, protect the MLSs that provide us with the information, but also give the consumers the choice to work with the real estate services that they want to work with and pay the compensation they feel like paying or not paying, right? Which we all negotiate sitting at the listing table, right? You're at a listing presentation, you're still negotiating commission many times. Some of you don't. Some of you have a really great listing presentation. You go, this is what I charge, and this is how much goes to the other side. And they go, sure, let's go. And no one bats an eye on it until now, right? And so it's important to understand that this actually came, this way that we do commissions now came from a place of buyers not having representation and buyers saying, we need representation. How can we ensure that our representation gets compensated? And we're buyers, so we're already coming to the table with a lot of money, so we can't necessarily afford to pay for this representation. They're not going to do it for less than what they can do it getting the listing and representing me on that side. So how do we do this? And so this was created, the way that we do commissions now, the way that we look at sellers and say, this is the percentage, and, a portion of this will go to the buy side, and in order for us to attract more buyers and bring them to the table. So now it seems like we're coming full circle, like we're trying to get rid of this and put us back in a position where buyers have no representation, right? And that's could be the case in some situations. Doesn't necessarily have to be the case, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's go through release of liability. So this agreement would release NAR and over 1 million NAR members, all state, territorial, local associations, MLSs, etc., from the lawsuit, right? So they would fall into the lawsuit. However, this is for people that did less than $2 billion in 2022. So if you did more than $2 billion in 2022, which are these brokers that were also listed in the lawsuit, so you can come here to the settlement agreement and you can see who's listed in the lawsuit. You see BAH Affiliates LLC, you see Remax, you see Keller Williams, you see Home Services of America. These names, if they've done 2 billion or more, which is a good possibility, they won't be released with this settlement. And so NAR claims that they very much tried to negotiate to have everyone released, but it didn't turn out that way. So those guys still got to fight their fight. And NAR is going to, protect as many people as they can. It's almost like leave some man behind, but you know what I mean? So, and it says here, NAR fought to include all members in the release, but was able to ensure that more than 1 million members are included. Despite NAR's efforts, agents affiliated with Home Services of America and its related companies and last corporate defendant still litigating are not released from the settlement, nor are the employees of the remaining corporate defendants named in cases covered by the settlement. Okay, so that's one thing. Compensation offers moved off of the MLS. I'm going to read this to you guys, and I want you to listen to it because, man, I got to tell you, the misinformation that I was seeing today on the internet was like driving me insane. I saw somebody post 600,000 real estate agents are going to be out of a job by July. You need to align yourself with a better brokerage to make sure you're okay. And I was like, wow, way to fear monger the weak and try to recruit them all, right? Like, and I hate seeing that. I hate seeing 6% will no longer be available. Like, this is no longer an option. This is what's happening with the posts that are coming out right now. So let me read this to you. Compensation offers moved off of the MLS, right? NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. And sellers can offer buyer concessions on the MLS. For example, concessions for buyer closing costs. This change will go into effect mid-July 2024. Now, here's the thing. It's important to recognize that this settlement agreement is not approved by the court yet. So this settlement agreement is not final yet. The court still has final say. They could look at this and go, I'm not happy with this. Certain things need to change. And everyone would end up going back to the drawing board for this, right? So DOJ, courts, everybody has a hand in this, right? And so we're in this position. I want you to be very understanding of that, because this is not the final version. However, the point of compensation offers being moved off of the MLS could still happen. So if it takes longer than mid-July 2024 for this to get approved by the courthouse, NAR could still say, we're still going to do this regardless to show good faith. We said mid-July, so that's going to happen. Mid-July, we'll remove this. But again, let's talk about this for a second. NAR agreed that we will remove from the MLS the little section that says how much the buyer's agent gets paid. By the way, this is not a bad thing. Do you know how many buyer's agents look through the MLS and they see two properties that are absolutely perfect for their client, and one says 3%, the other one says 2%, and they just show the 3%, pretend the 2% doesn't exist? Yes, there are agents out there that do that. I know some of you are thinking, no way, everybody's a professional, but no, they're not, okay? So there are still agents out there that do that. So maybe this is not a bad thing, right? The other piece is that it says offers of compensation could continue to be an option. Consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. So what does that mean? That means that sellers agents, right, listing agents can go and still have the conversation about compensating the buyer's agent and explaining the process. Why is it beneficial to a seller to compensate the buyer's agent as well? The benefit is that more eyes will get on this property, right? That, like, we know that if you could get more eyes on the property, that's a big win-win, because you're going to promote it like crazy. But then there are, a couple million other real estate professionals promoting it as well, right? Or a couple hundred, or whatever's in your MLS. But ideally, if you could get extremely good at explaining those benefits, and you can present an offer to them that really makes them and helps them understand, and as a seller of my home, it behooves me to provide compensation to the buyer's side. If you can explain that well, then that means that compensation can still be offered. Here's the flip side to this. A lot of buyer's agents, you guys are going to have to get very, very good at negotiating commission up front, looking at a buyer and saying, this is what I charge as a buyer's agent, and I will negotiate with the selling side to pay me said commission. However, if they don't pay me said commission, or they pay me less than said commission, you will owe me the rest. This is called negotiating your contract, negotiating your services, negotiating what you bring to the table. And so we're going to have to get very good with that, which leads to the next statement: written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. So MLS participant simply means you're a real estate agent or a realtor or a real estate professional that actually has MLS access, you're a board member, etc., right? So that's an MLS participant. If you are acting on the buyer side, it says, while NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreements for years, and they have, ladies and gentlemen, they have, coaches have, brokers have, states have, associations have. This has been something that has been spoken of for so long. I mean, Lord, I've been in the industry 19 years selling real estate, and all those 19 years, somebody has been talking about buyer agency agreements. They exist. They're in your documents. Just go to your dot loop or your whatever it is that you use, or SkySlope, and search buyer agreement, buyer agency agreement. It exists. It's there. Read it. Learn how to fill that sucker out. Some of you brokers out there, teach a class on this. Get people on board to be able to understand how they get this filled out and how they get a buyer to agree to sign this. Written agreements. While NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreements for years, in this settlement, we have agreed to require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written representation agreements with their buyers. This change will go into effect mid-July 2024. So that means by mid-July 2024, you better get very good at explaining to your buyers why they need to sign a buyer agency agreement with you. Now, I can see this going a bunch of different ways, right? I can see business going on as usual, and at closing, one of the required documents is that the buyer agency agreement be in place. I could see this going in a direction where some agents are going to work with buyers and say, hey, listen, we need to have this agreement in place before we can begin to work. And I think that would be kind of local and to the broker and how they're teaching it and how this goes. I mean, it's still up in the air a little bit, I think. But is it a bad thing? Like right now, real estate agents are jumping out of their seats to go show properties to potential buyers because inventory is so low, interest rates went up, market slowed down, it's picking back up again. So they just go show properties, right? And then they get cheated on because they don't know how to create relationships. And they go, oh no, I got cheated on. You know, I showed 5 properties to this person, and then they saw a 6th property with somebody else and closed on that property. And, you know, I don't know how to keep them on. This is it right here. Written agreements for buyers. Like, it's very simple, right? Settlement payment, NAR would pay $418 million over approximately 4 years. It's a substantial sum. It says it will be incumbent on NAR to use our remaining resources in the most effective way possible to continue delivering our core mission. So basically all the money that they collect from everybody and all the money that they raise and all the money that they put together and all the money that they have in the bank accounts is their remaining resources while they work on still having enough resources to not change leadership, to not change the way they do business, to not change the way that they support our agents, right? I know some of you are going to beat me up for saying that, right? NAR membership dues for 2024 will not change because of this payment. So that's a big deal, right? A lot of people are like, oh, great. You know, NAR dues are going to go up big time now, right? So there's that. NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing. So, by the way, for the longest time, and many of us know this, all the real estate agents, we know this, like NAR has never said we did wrong. I personal opinion, right? So like, let me say this. This is my personal opinion. I think we had very bad representation as attorneys. We weren't protected well. They didn't take this seriously enough. And now here we are, right? I think that we all know we didn't do anything wrong by requiring to be paid for doing a job that we do and we do well. So NAR says that they have long maintained and continue to believe that the cooperative compensation and NAR's current policies are good things that benefit buyers and sellers. I agree. We all agree there's a benefit on all sides. They promote access to property ownership, particularly for lower to middle income buyers, right? So now that's going to be a big subject because it says particularly for lower to middle income buyers who tend to be the less educated home buyers. So because they're the less educated home buyers, like the affluent can walk in, meet a listing agent and potentially buy the property because they have enough knowledge, probably done it 100 times, whatever it is. But the lower class and middle class folks, they need help. And many of us who are passionate about first-time home buyers and veteran buyers and so forth and so on, we thrive on our ability to help people into home ownership. And we know that these lower to middle class income buyers are typically spending every penny they have on purchasing this property. So they're not going to have an extra 3 to 6% for the buyer side or 3% or 2% or whatever it is. It's just not going to exist. And so they're going to end up in situations where they walk into homes with not enough knowledge, not enough education, no representation, and end up in potentially bad situations. Hopefully not, but it's potential. They promote access to, so we just said that right now, but difficult enough time saving for a down payment as it is. We just talked about that. All right. So with this settlement, NAR is confident it and its members can still achieve these goals. Why? Because the settlement doesn't say we're no longer going to use the cooperative compensation. Let me repeat that. The settlement doesn't say we will no longer use the cooperative compensation, what we do now. It just simply said, we're going to take it off the MLS. So now you'll actually have to pick up the phone, call the listing agent, and ask them, is there compensation being awarded for the buy side? Or maybe the section is gone for adding these numbers in, but in the broker remarks, it might say, you know, 2% or 3% being offered to buy side if you bring a buyer. Like, there's still going to be a cooperative compensation setup. It also encourages you, this email says it also encourages you to watch the video from the NAR Chief Legal Officer and Member Experience Officer, Kate Johnson, and me. Additionally, there are materials available for members at facts.realtor or competition.realtor. They'll continue to create the update. 116-year history that NAR has had with realtors. Settlement fact sheets, we can go into this real quick. We talked about this. Broker entities owned by members that had a residential transaction volume of 2 billion or below are released from liability. All right, so let's look at this. We talked about this, 2 billion and below released from liability, 2 billion and over in 2022, still fighting the battle. Implications for NAR. NAR is released from liability nationwide. Any officers, directors, or participants in the NAR activities are released from liability nationwide. All state, territorial, and local associations of realtors are released from liability nationwide. And it says the release includes all MLSs that are wholly owned by one or more realtor associations, again, nationwide. Impacts for other MLSs. The agreement provides a mechanism for other MLSs to be covered by it if they choose to use it. The mechanism includes opting into the MLS practice changes that they're talking about, which is basically removing that buy side, you know, compensation feature or compensation information completely, just removing it. It says so MLS practice changes that are part of the agreement and pay a per subscriber fee to the settlement fund. All right. So now MLSs that are not owned by realtor associations, they have these options. They're going to have to pay, right? While we would have preferred to protect all industry players, the MLSs not wholly owned by a realtor association were excluded by the plaintiff. Okay. So notice the defendant is NAR and 2 billion and below, and the million people they protected. On the flip side, there's the other folks, right? And they can't do it all. And the plaintiff is still saying, dude, we still want to sue some people, right? So NAR has put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. This change will take effect mid-July 2024. Everything we just talked about, these are practice changes. We were able to retain the right of consumers to continue to have cooperative compensation. Look, I'm going to highlight this for you guys, right? We were able to retain the right of consumers to continue to have cooperative compensation as an option, so long as they pursue it off MLS through negotiation, consultation with real estate professionals. This means it could be written in the contract. There could be an addendum. There can be all kinds of stuff, right? Like now, maybe as a buyer's agent, you present your contract with what you expect in commission as well. And that becomes a part of the negotiation as well. Of course, that's because you're going to have a buyer agency agreement in place as well. There would be continue to be many ways in which buyer brokers could be compensated, including through offers of compensation communicated off MLS, as we have long believed that is in the interest of the sellers, buyers, and brokers to make offers of compensation. But using the MLS to communicate offers of compensation would no longer be an option. So guys, it's not on the MLS anymore. Like, that's all. Doesn't mean that the 6% is gone and the 3 and 3 is gone. It just means it won't be on the MLS anymore. These types of compensation available for buyers brokers will continue to take multiple forms depending on broker consumer negotiations, including but not limited to fixed fee commission paid directly by consumers, concession from the seller, right? So your commission could be a concession from the seller, right? So you could have a buyer agency agreement in place that pays, you 3% from the buyer, and then the seller says we'll give you a 3% concession to cover those charges. Those are part of your closing costs, and the concession will be towards that portion of the listing broker's compensation. So the listing broker gets commission, and they actually still give you a portion of it. That's still in there, right? Compensation will continue to be negotiable and should always be negotiated between agents and the consumers they serve. Everything we just talked about. All right. Implications for home buyers and sellers. The settlement would preserve the choice of consumers regarding real estate services and compensation. So the consumer still has choice, power of choice. After the new rule goes into effect, listing brokers and sellers could continue to offer compensation for buyer broker services, but such offer is not communicated via MLS. Keep saying that. Settlement expressly provides that sellers may communicate seller concessions, such as buyer closing costs. Hello, right? Buyer has to pay their agent. Seller says, we'll provide some, money towards your closing costs if you choose to purchase our home. And that's how that'll work, right? New rule about written agreements. NAR has long encouraged its members to use written agreements because they help consumers understand exactly what services and value they will be provided and for how much. The settlement provides that MLS participants working with buyers must enter into written representation agreements with those buyers. This change will go into effect in mid-July 2024. You guys should start doing it now. You should have been doing it, but start doing it now so that you can be well prepared and ahead of the game. Implications for, sorry, I was repeating stuff. Other cases concerning the MLS Cooperative Compensation Model Rule, because this agreement would not end litigation to all defendants, litigating concerning cooperative compensation may continue. So that's interesting to know, because remember, not everyone's off the hook with this settlement. Some of the bigger companies are not off the hook with the settlement. And so the fight for the cooperative compensation may actually continue in those brokerages. Next steps, again, court approval and opt-outs. This is very important. It is not court approved yet, right? So there are strong grounds for the court to approve this settlement because it is in the best interest of all parties and class members. We can expect the process of court review to take several months or more. So we might not even hear whether or not the court is approving this or not for several months. Earlier in this video, I said that if the approval takes much longer than mid-July, we're still going to see these changes take effect. And it's going to be almost like a show of good faith from NAR saying, look, guys, we're already taking actions. So the courts can see that. And that's why they push for strong grounds, or part of why they're pushing for strong grounds. In a large class action settlement like this one, objections and opt-outs are common. And the plaintiffs and NAR will handle them as they come. So there might be objections from some of the parties, or there might be an opt-out from somebody. Somebody says, I don't want to be a part of this, situation, right? NAR operations, nothing's expected to change. Critical advantages of this agreement is that NAR would be able to pay the settlement over time. So $418 million over approximately 4 years. It's a lot of money. They're going to have to tap into their resources. They're going to get it done. They will continue to provide unparalleled value and advocacy on behalf of realtors, so forth and so on. So let's leave that alone. It also says NAR has evolved multiple times in history. It's been around for like 119 years, right? So, NAR has evolved multiple times in history, including by introducing the MLS model rule in the 1990s in response to calls from consumer protection advocates for buyer representation, is doing so again now. So here's the crazy part. 1990s, I said this earlier, 1990s, consumer protection agencies and advocates came to NAR and said, guys, we got these buyers. They're getting bamboozled. They have no representation. And they came up with this cooperative compensation. And now here we are. Everything's cyclical, guys, right? Everything's cyclical. Here we go, repeating our history. And so let's see how this breaks down. The crazy part is that what makes this different from what happened previous to the compensation model that we currently have is that the compensation model still exists, but we're going to have stronger negotiators, stronger real estate agents and professionals negotiating their commission. Now, why the settlement makes sense, and being someone who has dealt with lawsuits, I can easily understand this. If you've never dealt with a lawsuit, try to understand this to the best of your ability. But because if this settlement goes 100% through, a win on it gives them the opportunity to not be sued again for the same thing. Does that make sense? So if they settle on this, they're saying we're not guilty, but we want to put an end to the bleeding. And if we appeal this, that cost of appeal is going to be extreme, and it could push into a new jury trial, and it'll leave members and consumers with continued uncertainty. So us, we'd still be uncertain what's going to happen in the appeal. It's going to cost a ton of money to appeal. And then if the appeal goes through, it could keep going. They'll paper this to death. They'll push it. They'll extend it. They'll do everything they can to just burn as much money as possible. These attorneys will get paid hand over fist, and it'll just keep going and going and going. And it would be years before we understand a final situation. This situation might end up being cheaper, and it puts an end to the bleeding and stops now, right? A Chapter 11 reorganization. So potentially they could have done a Chapter 11, but it says in theory, a Chapter 11 would have enabled NAR to eliminate its own liabilities while pursuing an appeal, but believe that it would have left members with continued uncertainty and potential liability risk. Chapter 11 would also have paused the litigation against NAR, but not the other defendants in the cooperative compensation cases. So if they went with a Chapter 11, they would have protected themselves, but they would not have protected the million-plus real estate agents that they were, or members, let's say, that they were able to protect by taking on this settlement. So then it goes on to say, ultimately, while NAR continues to believe that it is not liable for the home seller claims related to the broker commissions, and that we have strong arguments challenging the Sitzner-Burnett verdict, we decided to reach the settlement to put claims to rest for over 1 million NAR members and other parties who would be released under this agreement. What's next? The practice changes will go in effect mid-July 2024. So buyer agency agreement and no more display of compensation on the MLS. A settlement is subject to court approval, which is a process that we can expect to take several months or more, and will include an opportunity for interested parties to object in large class action suits. This is normal, very common, right? We will move to have litigation about the MLS cooperative compensation models rules stayed or paused as to NAR pending the settlement approval process. So that means right now they're still fighting with the other guys about the cooperative compensation model rule, which again is the current way that we pay commissions, or that we earn commissions, right? So what they're going to move to do is have it paused, that whole argument paused completely until the courts have enough time to review the settlement agreement and approve it, or ask for change, or whatever the case is. Once it's approved, then it'll protect the NAR and the NAR members on this cooperative compensation model, but not for the other folks that are still involved, like Home Services of America. NAR will also continue to provide updates and settlement process as it unfolds. Competition.realtor. You guys write that down. Competition.realtor. So I wanted, I hope this was super helpful. I hope that this is an opportunity for you to get away from the nonsense that you're seeing, the fear mongering that real estate agents are. Look, I'm a real estate coach, and I coach agents, and I would never in a million years go out there and create a fake narrative to make you feel like you need to hire me as a coach. Like, guys, take what I sent you, take what I spoke to you about. Go back, go to NAR, read it yourself, understand it yourself, educate yourself, step up to the plate for your industry, learn it yourself, become an advocate for it, and get a great understanding of it. And then when you see these like fear mongers out there giving you fake news, right? Like, it's a new thing now, fake news, right? The guys that are doing the fake news, like, unfollow those guys, right? Like, get them out of your heads, because it's I don't see the benefit to spreading negative information out there. First of all, spreading negative information does a couple things. One, it makes realtors scared, and they think that that's going to be the end all for everything. And like, I saw a post again, 600,000 real estate agents are going to be, out of the industry by July. It's a ridiculous claim. Nowhere in all of these facts did you hear any of that, right? Are there going to be some agents that fall off? Yes, because there's going to be people who don't know how to negotiate their commissions. There's going to be people who don't know how to negotiate, period. There's going to be people who are afraid to ask, buyers for a buyer agency agreement. There's going to be people that go, you know what, man, this is too crazy for me. Like, I'm going back to accounting or whatever they were doing before real estate, right? And so that's okay, by the way. Like, it's, I don't want to say like only the strong survive, but that's okay. It's okay that happens. It's okay that exists. And it's not a big deal, folks. Like, just like stick with it. Now, if you survived this last year, 2023, and you're in 2024 right now and you're still fighting, like, guys, you guys are fighters, man. So this is gonna be fine. Just learn, educate yourself, right? Like, follow me on all social media platforms. Like, share this video with a bunch of people. Like, this is right now streaming on 3 Facebook channels: LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Instagram. Like, share this out with other people so that they can learn, because I promise you, one thing that I will never ever do is misinform you. I'd rather not say a thing until I truly understand. People couldn't wait to get to social media this morning and post out some shit information. And I wanted to be able to at least have the time at a busy day. I didn't have the time to read it for myself. I had an opportunity to read it for myself, and I shared it with you on the screen. So, I'm not making stuff up, like, directly from the source, right? And then again, educate yourself, join great communities, surround yourself with the right agents, know the business, get with the right brokers. If you're nervous about your brokerage and your brokerage not being able to set themselves up accordingly for what's about to happen, make a change, bro. It's okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're independent contractors. We can go anywhere we want and work with and under the flag of any brokerage we want. Thankfully, the brokers that I'm with, I happen to be with LPT Realty, and Robert Palmer is a beast, and he's already put things in motion to prepare for this because he saw this coming. So I'm looking forward to hearing him speak on Monday, where he'll be speaking on this. And he does something every Monday, Motivational Monday. He's going to be deep diving into how our brokerage is preparing ourselves for this change, for this shift. And I'm sure it has something to do with, required documentation and buyer agency agreements and how we present them, and what do they mean to the industry, and what do they mean to us as a brokerage, and, what are our internal rules are going to be, maybe we'll have some overlays. I don't know. I can't read his mind. I won't know till Monday. Probably come back here and do a recap on Monday on how we shifted. But the point is that this is completely up to you. You have all the opportunity in the world to educate yourself and then shift where you need to shift. This industry, by the way, if you're in this industry for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to always have changes, and it's always going to have shifts. And listen, we provide the one commodity that everyone needs. We provide homes. And that is not something light to be taken. It's not something small. We're not selling water. We're not selling, bullshit. We're not selling tape. We're not selling, cars even. We're not we are selling the one commodity that everybody needs or wants: a home, a place to cover themselves, to shelter themselves, to hide from the cold, to hide from the heat, to protect their families, to build wealth, to create legacy. We provide that opportunity. Real estate agents provide that opportunity. And as long as we can continue to prove our value, that value that we bring to the table, that value is going to help us earn compensation, right? We'll be compensated for the value that we bring our consumers. All right, guys, I'm going to let you guys go because I know it's Friday and I'm a total nerd, and it's 6:36 in the evening and I'm over here talking to you guys. But I'm wishing you a super great weekend, successful weekend, because I know we real estate agents work all weekend, right? I know many of you have open houses and things of that nature. Start looking for buyer agency agreements. Start studying them. Start talking about them. Start asking your broker, how are we going to implement this buyer agency agreement in-house? I'm sure many brokers are speaking to their attorneys right now. And listen, by the way, there are many brokers out there that don't have an attorney, and they're trying to figure this out. And God bless you guys. Hope you guys are doing great and stepping up to the plate, and you can protect your agents. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning into my nerdness, and I'm excited to bring this kind of news and really kind of give you the facts, and then give you a little bit of a coach's perspective on it, on how you're going to have to change the narrative and become a better negotiator through time. All right, I'm sure this will be a topic for many months to come, especially leading up to July. So I'll see you guys soon. Y'all be safe.